In Acts chapter 15, the early church convened the Jerusalem Council to address the question of whether Gentile converts to Christianity needed to follow the full Mosaic law, including circumcision. The council ultimately decided to place a lighter yoke upon the Gentiles, but it did not abolish the law altogether. Instead, they placed certain requirements upon the Gentile believers that reflected key aspects of the Mosaic law. This demonstrates that the early church regarded the law as still binding in some respects, although they allowed some flexibility in its application to the Gentiles. The issue at hand: some believers from Judea were teaching that Gentiles must be circumcised and that they needed to follow Moses' law to be saved. Paul and Barnabas disagreed with this, leading to a dispute. The matter was brought before the apostles and elders in Jerusalem. After much discussion, Peter, Paul, and James spoke, and it was decided that Gentiles did not need to be circumcised but should adhere to certain guidelines. James summarized the decision in Acts chapter 15, verse 19 to 20. Therefore, I judge that we should not trouble those from among the Gentiles who are turning to God, but that we write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from things strangled, and from blood. These four stipulations were a lighter yoke, not a full adherence to the entire Mosaic law, but they were still based on moral and ceremonial aspects of the law that the early church deemed necessary for Gentiles. And things polluted by idols, this related to the Old Testament concerning idolatry and its associated practices. For example, we find this in Leviticus 17, verse 7 to 10, and Deuteronomy 32, verse 16. Sexual immorality, this was in line with the moral laws given to Israel, such as the prohibitions found in Leviticus chapter 18. Strangled and blood, these rules are rooted in the dietary laws of the Old Testament. For example, Leviticus 17, verse 10 to 14, and Leviticus chapter 18, verse 6 to 7. Abstaining from blood was particularly significant as a symbol of purity and respect for life. So what's the significance of the decision? The church did not declare that the law was done away with, but rather that the Gentiles were not required to keep all the ordinances of the Mosaic law, like circumcision, for salvation. However, they still recognized the importance of certain elements of the law for Christian living, particularly the moral laws and the ceremonial aspects that help Gentiles maintain a separation from pagan practices. The early church decision in Acts 15 demonstrates that the law was not entirely abolished, but rather that a lighter yoke was placed on the Gentiles. The rules they imposed were drawn from the Jewish law, showing that the early church still regarded aspects of the law as binding.